In the last video, I introduced if statements, and we had something like this. If minutes is greater than 400, and then we executed some extra code that would only run if the user had gone over 400 minutes this month. Today we're going to talk about the piece inside the parentheses, and that's called a conditional. So this conditional is what decides whether our inside code runs. If the user has 500 minutes this month, 500 is more than 400, that inside code is going to run. If the user has 300 minutes, 300 is greater than 400 is not true, that code inside does not run. So the conditional is this really key part of the if statement that decides whether the code inside the braces will run or not. So we've used minutes as greater than 400, but let's talk about other ways that we can compare two numbers. So let's say, for example, we'd like to know if the user stayed within their budgeted minutes this month. Well, you can envision we can just flip this greater than sign around, so it'll become minutes is less than 400. Now we have almost the opposite. If they use 300 minutes this month, that'd be true, they stayed within their minutes. If they use 500 minutes, 500 less than 400 is false, so we won't display something about staying within their minutes. But we're missing one key case. What if they use exactly 400 minutes? They're still within their minutes that month, they didn't go over. But 400 is less than 400 is not true, so this will be false. We won't display the message we want to display. We need something slightly different. We actually want to ask, is minutes less than or equal to 400? And mathematically, we typically write that by putting a little line under the less than sign. You may have done that in Word. You can find a way to insert that less than or equal to symbol, but it's kind of a pain to type in. So in Java, what we do instead is we write the less than symbol and then the equal sign. You can do the same thing with greater than or equal as well. What's another way to compare numbers? Well, we might want to know if a number is exactly equal to something. We can say, is minutes equal to 400? And we actually write two equal signs there. That's because one equal sign, if we say minutes equals 400, that means take the number 400 and put it in the minutes variable to remember for later. Two equal signs means compare these two variables. Does minutes equal 400? And that'll be something that's either true or false. The last thing we might want to know is if minutes is not equal to 400. And we can do this two ways. I'll show you the one we won't really use first because it introduces a new idea, this not symbol in the front. It's just an exclamation point. We get that by doing Shift 1. And that takes the thing after it. Minutes is equal to 400, and it flips it. So let's say minutes is 300. 300 equals 400 is not true, so that'd be false. The not will flip it, so instead of false, it becomes true. If minutes is equal to 400, 400 equals 400 is true. The not flips it, so it becomes false. So this does exactly what we want. If we put this in an if statement, this would only be true if minutes is not equal to 400. But there's also a quicker way to write this. You're putting the not sign right in there. Minutes is not equal to 400. I show you that first way because it'll actually come in handy a little bit later. So don't forget about that. But if we want to just compare two numbers, we'll use not equal to. So let's do a quick practice. We want to display a message if the user did not earn overtime. So we've got a variable called hours. We've got some code I've taken out here. Maybe we're asking the user for the number of hours they worked, or we're doing some calculation to figure it out. And then we've got an if statement. We want the condition to be true if the user does not earn overtime. And typically we say that someone earns overtime if they work more than 40 hours a week. So if this variable is more than 40, they've earned overtime. What is our conditional going to be if they did not earn overtime? Let me give you a second to pause the video and figure that out, and then come back and we'll continue. Okay, so hopefully you figured that out. If they did not earn overtime, then they did not work more than 40 hours. So one way to write this is hours is less than or equal to 40. There are a couple other ways to do it, so if you came up with something else that works, that's just fine, but this is a really good one. So hours is less than or equal to 40. That'll be true if they did not earn overtime. Let's say we work for a company that has extra overtime, which means if you work more than 60 hours a week, you get paid even more. Let's figure out if someone has worked regular overtime. So they've worked overtime more than 40 hours a week, but they haven't worked more than 60 hours a week. We might want to write something like this. 40 is less than hours is less than or equal to 60. And we do that in mathematics fairly regularly. But unfortunately, Java can't do this three-way comparison. We can't compare 40 is less than hours and hours is less than or equal to 60 all in one big statement. What we're going to have to do is split this up. So 40 is less than hours is one thing we're going to compare, and hours is less than or equal to 60 is another thing we're going to compare. And someone earns regular overtime if those are both true. So we're going to use something called an AND combiner. AND is true if both of the separate pieces are true. And we write AND using two ampersand signs. That's shift 7. So we'll again split this up, and we'll put our two ampersand signs in the middle. This is now true if they've earned regular overtime. They've worked more than 40 hours, but they haven't worked more than 60 hours. And you might flip this around. I think it's a little easier to read the second version. Hours is greater than 40, and hours is less than or equal to 60. So AND is true if both conditions are true. But we might want to know if one of the conditions is true, and we can use OR with that. So we might, for example, get a bonus if someone works a certain number of hours per week, or their customer feedback is high enough. So if either of those things is true, they get a bonus. It works also if both of those things are true. If they have high customer feedback and a lot of hours worked, they'll still get the bonus. So one or both of the conditions would be true for OR. To do OR, we'll do a double pipe. And a pipe is a key that you've probably never noticed before. It's right above the Enter key. I'll kind of zoom in here. On a lot of keyboards, it's actually not a single piece. It looks like it's kind of split. But that's the key you want. You'll do Shift and then that key. If you don't do Shift, you'll get the backspace there. Up until this point, we've talked about numbers, and whether a variable is an int or a double, they work almost exactly the same way. But strings, unfortunately, work a little bit differently. So if we have a program where we create a string called weather, we figure out what the weather is like outside, and we have an if statement, if weather equals sunny, we'd think that this would run the code if the weather outside is sunny. Unfortunately, weather equals sunny is almost always going to be false. This doesn't do what we want it to do. Instead, we need to use a method called equals to compare the two. We're instead going to say weather.equals and then put sunny in parentheses. This will be true if weather is equal to that other string, sunny. Now, this is only true if they're exactly equal, which means a capital S, lowercase u, n, n, y. If we want to say, well, is the weather sunny, but the capitalization doesn't matter, then we use a slightly different method called equals ignore case. So we've got weather dot equals ignore case, and then sunny in parentheses. And this will be true if the weather is sunny, no matter how it's capitalized. So let's end this video with a few more examples for you to practice on. Let's say we've got the user's score in a class, and we want to print out a statement if they get a B. We'll say a B is anywhere in the 80s. Take a second and pause this and figure out what is going to go inside that if statement. Okay, hopefully you figured out the conditional. We're going to need if score is greater than or equal to 80, so they got an 80 or above, and score is less than 90, so they didn't get an A. If that is both of those pieces are true, then they got a B. We should print out our output here. Let's do a couple more examples with the weather. So we'll have a variable called temp, which has the temperature in Fahrenheit, and we'll have a string called weather, which will be sunny or raining or something like that, cloudy for example. Let's say we've got an if statement and we want to know if we're going to go outside. We're going to run some code only if that's the case. And we'll go outside if it's sunny and 70 degrees or above. What would be our conditional for that case? So take a second, pause, and figure out what's going to go inside that conditional. Okay, hopefully you figured that out. We want to know, is the temperature 70 or above, and is it sunny? We're going to say, is temp greater than or equal to 70? And because we want both of these things to be true if we're going to go outside, we want it to be sunny. And this is a string, so we can't just do equals equals. We've got to do weather dot equals ignore case sunny. Now I didn't say anything about case, so if you have weather dot equals sunny, that was correct as well. Now let's say we want an if statement and we're going to do something in here if we are not going to go outside. So we're only going outside if it's 70 degrees or above and if it's sunny. How do we know if we are not going to go outside? So take a second, pause, and try to figure that out. Now that one's pretty tricky. Let's see if you got it. Temp is less than 70, so we're going to stay in if temperature is less than 70. We're also going to stay in if the weather is not sunny. So we've got weather.equals ignore case or weather.equals, and then sunny in parentheses. And we've got a not in front of that. Now, it doesn't have to be that both of those are true. We're going to stay inside even if it's sunny but cold, or even if it's warm and raining, we're going to stay inside. So we've got an or here. Temperature is less than 70, or the weather is not sunny. Either way, we're going to stay inside.